Greetings, OMN viewers around the world. Today, my guest is Representative Mike Coffman, a member of the House of Representatives of the United States, representing the 6th District of Colorado. We're going to discuss mainly the HRES 128, the vote on Ethiopia. But before that, Congressman, our viewers would like to know a little bit about you, so I'll ask you a question about that will help us, our viewers, to get to know you. Now, how do you view your job in Congress? Is it like a politician or a public servant?
Well, public service. My goal is to represent the communities within my congressional district, and so I have a very diverse congressional district. So I'm very proud to represent really the Oromo community that is in my district, and because of my desire to represent them, I've certainly learned about their challenges with the government of Ethiopia.
Does that have anything to do with your life experience, that you view your work as representing your constituents in the Congress?
Well, I think having lived a while outside the United States, my mother's an immigrant to the United States, so I have an appreciation for the immigrant communities in my congressional district, and so I probably pay a little bit more attention to them. I think because they have unique challenges and trying to adjust to being in the United States, and each one has its own issues, and oftentimes those issues are a matter of American foreign policy and our relationship with the country that they came in. In this case, with the government of Ethiopia, it's very impressive.
All right, thank you. Now, you're one of the most visible advocates of congressional action to call the Ethiopian government to account for its human rights violations and encouraging inclusive governance in Ethiopia. What made you such a consistent champion of change in Ethiopia in the United States Congress?
Well, I think certain members of the Oromo community who came to me with concerns about the government of Ethiopia, probably several years ago, and I can remember taking their concerns and requesting a meeting with the Ethiopian ambassador to the United States in Washington, D.C. And I think what was very interesting was his response was he pretty much told me everything that I wanted to hear in terms of that the government acknowledged that there were some problems and they were going to do an internal investigation, and they thanked me for my concerns and everything. And really nothing happened. And then as I looked further and further into it, the government pushed back more and more and more. And so I really found over time that there are incredible abuses by the government of Ethiopia to its own people. And then of course I got resistance from my own government because the government of Ethiopia was always threatening the United States to say, if you speak out against our government, we will not cooperate with you on the war against terrorism, security issues involving the United States in the region around Ethiopia. So it's been a struggle, but I believe that we'll make it.
Yeah, a prominent example of your ways in which you try to bring a change to Ethiopia is the House Resolution 128. The way I looked at the bill, it's comprehensive and it's tough on Ethiopia. What is the overall goal of the bill? What is it meant to accomplish?
Well, the overall goal is to bring human rights to the country of Ethiopia. Probably the biggest reason, and there are a number of factors that the Ethiopian government finds to them offensive or threatening. Um, it's threatening to them and calling them out for their abuses on human rights. They're very worried about their own stability in the country. They're trying to exercise really sort of military martial law against the people of Ethiopia. And secondly, I think they're very concerned about being forced to have human rights observers from the United Nations into Ethiopia. They see it as a violation of their sovereignty. But that is called for in the resolution.
So this bill was introduced at the beginning of the year in February, I suppose, February 2017. That indicated to me that you had planned to have the whole year and make sure that you'll have a chance to debate it and pass the resolution. And the resolution acquired as many as 74 bipartisan co-sponsors. It passed the House Foreign Affairs Committee with a unanimous support, and it was placed on the calendar for a vote on the House floor. And it was suddenly withdrawn in September.
Right.
And it's placed. What is it? What is the holdup? What is it that? What happened?
Well, first, I inquired, why wasn't it was scheduled for a vote? Well, first of all, I had trouble in the Foreign Affairs Committee, where the committee chairman didn't want to come bring it up for a vote. Then we had to negotiate with his staff to put, essentially what we did was we required to amend the resolution to put in a statement acknowledging that Ethiopia was cooperating with the United States. But being very careful, the European government had the right to beat this and still called for the United Nations to bring observers into the country to assess the situation on human rights. Then once that negotiation occurred, it didn't pass unanimously in the committee. Then the question is, why wasn't it coming up before a vote? And I had to push. So finally, I found out that the chairman of the House Foreign Services Committee had a hold. It was called place a hold on the bill. I had to go to meet with him. He expressed concerns about the Ethiopian government was threatening to pass a cooperate with the United States on war against terrorism in Indonesia. That there were some big pending operations. He asked for 30 days and said that the Ethiopian government was preparing to make some announcement about the human rights of democracy in the country. 30 days away. They didn't want its security to be pushed by the resolution. Well, 30 days lapsed. There was no statement by the Ethiopian government. I went back to Matt Thornberry and said, okay, I'll listen on it. But still no vote. Then I went to the majority from the United States House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy from California. And so he was getting lobbied heavily by the Ethiopian government, again threatening cooperation or cooperation with the United States. I was pretty mad at this point because I said, look, it passed unanimously out House Foreign Affairs Committee. The chairman of the Armed Services Committee lifted his opposition. And I just voted on the bill, on the resolution. And then finally, he, so that we agreed to this, that there would be a negotiation on a timeline for advances in terms of democracy or human rights, whatever. There's an Ethiopian negotiation. I'm not going to. It's not my job to be part of that. That would be appropriate. But there will be Ethiopians negotiating with his staff in terms of what a timeline might look at. Like, and if they default on the timeline, then it would come to a vote agreement.
I think the bill recognized Ethiopia's effort to promote regional peace and security, and we know that that is important to the United States. Stability in the region is extremely important, and 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 its partnership, Ethiopia's partnership, is also recognized in combating terrorism. So that is important to the United States and national security. We understand
Right.
that. But do you consider Ethiopia at this point in time is a good partner in counterterrorism and as in regional stability in the Horn of Africa region, that Ethiopia is strong enough internally, stable enough internally to be able to be that anchor in the Horn of Africa? Do you think that it is still?
I
Uh,
don't think that. I don't think that. I think the problem is that and I think that American policymakers are not focused enough on the stability of Ethiopia. If you have, I mean, what breeds terrorism is when you have unstable areas that become ungovernable.
hmm,
That's very dangerous. And I think that Ethiopia is becoming less and less stable, less and less reliable as a partner with the United States. And I think there's some question about Ethiopia's constant threats about withdrawing cooperation with the United States. And in fact, when we criticize them for human rights abuses, I mean, they get a lot of military aid from the United States, and I really question their ability to suddenly not cooperate with the United States. I think the United States has to push Ethiopia towards human rights. There's a pattern of the United States sort of doing what it's doing in Ethiopia. Sadly, there's a pattern in the United States having done that in I would say, called the Cold War against communism, where it allied itself with government that we dictated in order to fight communism. Well, they created a whole separate fight, sometimes much worse. And so, I think the United States, I mean, I think we're going to have both those. I think you can have an Ethiopian government that's democratic, they respect human rights, and that's what rights with the United States and the United States. And if we have to choose between the two, I choose an Ethiopian government that, even though we're going to go through some difficult times with them, but I think we have to be very tough with them. Because I think we should be concerned about the stability of the area. What we could be bringing is a lot of anger in the United States among the Ethiopian people, and that could be a challenge for the United States in the long
um, I think the Ethiopian government has been doing this since this government came to power, and at some point in time, there was some internal strength, especially when the former prime minister was in power, that he credibly used this threat of non-cooperation with the United States. Now there is change in
Sure.
Ethiopia, and there is also change in the United States in administration. Is there any change that you're looking forward to because of the new administration trying to cut off aid in general? Would that apply to Ethiopia? And is
Sure.
there any change?
Well, it seems like when I meet with the Democratic government, they have different positions in terms of their assessment about the value of Ethiopian cooperation, whether or not the Ethiopian government will withdraw it as a saving on cooperation. One of the problems with the State Department though, is the fact that you have that the administration has been very slow to fill its positions. And so, unfortunately, we have a lot of holdovers from the prior administration that are continuing the same policies in the prior administration. Well, and that applies to a lot of countries, whether it's Venezuela or it's Ethiopia or it's other countries. And so, I think that's part of the problem that those mid-level bureaucrats in the State Department uh, favor the Ethiopian government over the people of Ethiopia. And I think that that's inappropriate. And so I hope that this president, wakes up to the fact it's inappropriate to continue the policies of the last administration. That's exactly what he's doing.
The Horn of Africa and the Northeast Africa in general is its history is very well known. It's a very unstable region. But there is also Yemen on the other side of the Red Sea right now. Now, how would you, as a congressman, characterize the prevailing condition of stability and security in the Horn, setting aside what the State Department thinks about the situation there? How do you characterize that area yourself?
Well, very difficult, but the United States certainly has a foothold in the area as against the Burmese. But there is, we're very sad that recently in Somalia there was a major attack. I think that over 500 people were killed in massive terrorist attack against the people of Somalia. So it's a very dangerous region, and I feel sorry for the people of Yemen too. That's been torn apart in war with, uh, you know, Iran's involvement, Saudi Arabia's involvement in a conflict. So certainly the United States has a concern about the stability of the Horn of Africa, and I believe uh, that the government of Ethiopia, first of all, I believe the democratic government would be much more supportive of the United States and its security goals in the region than a dictatorship, and that's what we have today, because that dictatorship has to divert a lot of the military aid that's given to it by the United States, supposedly to fight against to, to fight the war on terror, to divert that military aid against its own people, because that's the government has tried to do, but effectively put down popular protest by the Ethiopian people, certainly by the Oron people, but also by the Amharic people against the government with just brute force. And so we have to understand that American military aid is not simply going to fight the war on terrorism, it's going to fight the people of Ethiopia who have who are peacefully protesting the government and who are brutally put down by that by the very aid that the United States is providing.
Yeah, that raises this question of moral hazard. That on the one hand,
Right.
the United States is interested in security and stability in the region, and providing financial, diplomatic, and military aid to make sure that Ethiopia remains stable. But the Oromo protest that you just mentioned, the popular nonviolent uprising within the country has severely diminished the capacity of
Sure.
the Ethiopian government to be a credible counterterrorism partner. So you're saying, and if you can, please comment on that. Could you would you be able to explain to the State Department, to policymakers, that democracies don't fight? It is better to have a government that actually shares the values of the
Sure.
United States rather than having a dictatorship in power. Would you be able to explain that to the State Department, your understanding of the situation there?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think that, I've not been to Ethiopia yet. I was invited by the government of Ethiopia to go, but I don't think that's appropriate because they would obviously just show me what they want me to see. But there might be the possibility that I could go with what's called a congressional delegation visit, whereby I would be the under the United States embassy that would arrange my travels. And so inside the country. And so, of course, there would still be a question of would I be able to see what I need to see in order to assess the civil rights and human rights issues in Ethiopia. Um, and let me just say, I've been in constant communications with the United Nations um, with what the position is of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, who's very concerned about the situation in Ethiopia. And although he has an office in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian government does not give the personnel in that office open access to the country and allow him to utilize the office to look at other countries and use that as a basis of support. So that's something that needs to be changed because the Ethiopian government themselves cannot be trusted to do an assessment as to their progress in human rights. Although I will say this that the I just talked to the High Commissioner on Human Rights earlier this week, and he did say that he was impressed with some of the recent things that the Ethiopian government has done. But these are small in comparison to all the things it needs to do. By reducing political prisoners, by closing a detention for political prisoners. But again, it has a very long ways to go, and that's only one step. And they've done nothing to restore democracy to the country in terms of giving all political parties and all groups the ability to have their votes counted in terms of government representation.
It looks like listening to you and your commitment to upholding human rights and promoting human rights and holding the Ethiopian government to account, as you just said, through investigations by the United Nations delegation. It looks like you have an alternative source of information than the United States government itself has. Now, do you believe that young Oromos and Amharas and others in Ethiopia have chosen to protest through the civil means rather than a violent means, and that their aspiration actually aligns with the values of the United States? What is your source of information in that respect? So there are two questions here. Do you believe that what they are doing, the young generation, represents a force for peace, democracy, and prosperity? And if you believe so, how do you? What is the source of your information that actually shapes your thinking about it?
Well, first of all, I think the source of information is the Ethiopian communities in my congressional district, Oromo and Amara, who have externally first-hand information from their relatives and friends who are still in Ethiopia to explain the ongoing situation to me. There are reports within the American government that I requested that I think are fairly accurate in describing the human rights abuses in Ethiopia. Again, the problem is that the actions of the American government are compromised because of their interest in their own national security goals in the region, and because of that, they compromise. The American government has compromised our own values in terms of human rights and democracy, and I don't think that's appropriate. So I believe that if we focus on human rights and democracy, the rest will fall into place.
Yeah, I think change in Ethiopia is going to come from within. The last 3 years, the protests have gone on for 3 years. That's really unprecedented in Ethiopian history and African history. But it speaks to the determination of this young generation of Ethiopians not to settle for anything less than democracy, peace, and prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
But outside the United States, those activists outside Ethiopia that are trying to be a voice for the Ethiopians, the grassroots activists that are supporting House Resolution 128, how could they help you in Congress to try to, yeah?
It will be very important. I believe that it will come to a vote because I don't think that the Ethiopian government has any intention of following through on human rights or democracy. So whatever schedule is negotiated, they will reach. And so my commitment then in the signed document will be that it comes up before a vote. At that point in time, we will desperately need all of those Ethiopians residing in America to contact their congressional offices by writing letters, by making phone calls, by making visits to their respective members of Congress and the United States House of Representatives to vote for this bill. And that will be so critical, so important, because on the other side, the Ethiopian government will do everything it can to defeat this legislation by scaring, by threatening the members of Congress with withdrawing cooperation from the Ethiopian government. It is so important that these voices be heard. It will be a very tough fight to pass this resolution, giving all the money that the Ethiopian government is spending through hiring lobbying firms, hiring public relations firms to put out a false view, a false impression of conditions inside of Ethiopia. If we lose this fight, if we lose the vote on this resolution, it may very well be worse than doing nothing, because what that will mean that then the Ethiopian government will have won, and they will then feel empowered to further brutalize their people. So I can't speak enough. The groups that I'm working with have to get the word out. The Ethiopian community, the Oromo community, the Amara community has to organize behind this resolution once we know it's coming up before us.
Well, thank you so much. What would be the prospect that this meeting of constituent groups and congressional staffers, the prospect of that negotiation leading to the passage of um, the bill?
Well, certainly hopefully that's going and that will come to an agreement. There will be a timeline that will be specific in terms of goals for the government to achieve in terms of democracy and human rights. And that, and again, this will be negotiated by Ethiopian leaders within the United States from Oromo and Amar communities uh, on the 29th. And um, but I don't have faith. Whatever is negotiated, I don't have faith that the Ethiopian, the probability is the Ethiopian government will not. They are not a party to the negotiation. The purpose of the negotiation is only that that if in fact the timeline is not done, that then comes up before a vote. I think that they will, if as long as something meaningful can be negotiated. I mean, it will be great if the Ethiopian government can deliver on these things. I think that's wonderful. Judge, based on my experience thus far in working with them, I really doubt it. But I had to go through this step to be able to bring the bill up for a vote. So it's just another obstacle that's thrown in the way that I have to do before it comes up before the vote. And we have to have a tight timeline. It has to come up right procedurally. It certainly has to come up before a vote. I would say by next summer. Well, by this summer, I think it to come up before a vote, or early in the fall, but not beyond that. So I would hope that the timeline would be negotiated and things that are fairly visible up to that date.
Well, we will do our part in Ethiopia
Thank you
to
so much.
bring about change, but we can't thank you enough for helping us out along the way. No
No, thank
one
you.
understood the plight of
Thank
the
you.
Oromo people and the Ethiopian people as they do for themselves in the United States. You're the first congressman who understood the plight of the people and stood up for their constituents and even more for Oromos in Oromia. We can't thank you enough for that.
Such an honor to represent the Oromo community as well as my other immigrant communities in my congressional district and to have them be a part of the fabric of our country.
Well, good luck tonight in Washington. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.